death of a true action hero. Who or what killed the one, the only, Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee's death has puzzled fans all over the world to this day, and there are no final answers.
He grew up with me in my heart. I was shocked when he died because something was missing in my heart.
Now, Jean-Claude Van Damme says he knows why Bruce Lee died so young, and it's pretty shocking. Van Damme, who went from being a karate kid to a big movie star, might finally give us some answers. Why did Bruce Lee's death affect the Belgian martial artist so much? Join us to uncover dark details that will forever change your perception of the invincible Bruce Lee. Kicking high in action films. Jean-Claude Van Damme's journey from a young boy who loved karate in Brussels to becoming a famous action movie star is quite an exciting story. When he was just 10 years old, he started learning martial arts and quickly showed he was really good at it. He got his second black belt and was almost unbeatable in kickboxing, winning 18 out of 19 matches by knocking his opponents out. In 1982, he decided to move to the United States, hoping it would help him make a big name for himself, and that's exactly what happened. His first big Hollywood movie was Bloodsport, which came out in 1988. People loved it, and it was a huge success. That movie opened the door for him to star in other big hits like Kickboxer, Lionheart, and Universal Soldier. Each of these films was a hit and helped him become more and more popular. Thanks to these movies, he made over $1 billion, making him not just a star, but also very wealthy. Van Damme's story is pretty amazing because it shows how someone with a passion for something, like martial arts, can work hard and turn that passion into a huge success. Moving to a new country and making it big in Hollywood is not easy, but Van Damme did it with his martial arts skills and by getting the chance to show what he could do in action-packed movies. Bruce Lee's life story is incredibly fascinating. Born in the United States but raised in Hong Kong, he was much more than just an actor. He was a master of martial arts who changed the way action movies are made with his fresh ideas on fighting. From a young age, he trained in Wing Chun, a form of Chinese kung fu, with his teacher, Yip Man. Lee was always looking to get better and eventually created his own martial arts style and philosophy known as Jeet Kune Do. This new style focused on being practical and adaptable in combat, which was a game changer in martial arts. Both Bruce Lee and Jean-Claude Van Damme managed to turn their deep love for martial arts into phenomenal film careers that have greatly influenced the action movie genre. However, while Van Damme has had a lengthy career, Bruce Lee's was tragically short, as he died just when he was reaching the peak of his fame. His sudden death has sparked endless discussions and theories, leaving many people wondering about the real reasons behind his early demise. This unanswered question adds an even more compelling layer to his already intriguing story, highlighting a brilliant life that was cut far too short. The parallels between these two giants of martial arts are hard to overlook. They both changed the game in Hollywood, turning their fighting skills into cinematic gold. However, Van Damme's story continues to unfold, while Lee's remains incomplete, shrouded in doubts and unresolved questions about his sudden demise. This adds a layer of intrigue to Lee's legacy, keeping his fans yearning for answers and clinging to the possibilities of what might have been had he lived longer. His skills got Hollywood's attention, and he first appeared on American TV in the series The Green Hornet, playing Kato. This role made him quite popular in the US, setting the stage for his later success in movies. His big moment came with the film The Big Boss, which broke box office records in Hong Kong and showed off his impressive martial arts skills, firmly establishing him as a top action movie star. Bruce Lee quickly became a big deal in the martial arts film world, with his movies Fist of Fury in 1972 and Way of the Dragon. In Way of the Dragon, he wasn't just the main guy on screen. He also wrote the story, directed the movie, and designed all those fight moves. His throwdown with Chuck Norris in the Coliseum is still one of the most talked about fight scenes ever. Lee had an eye for detail and a way of making fight scenes that hadn't been seen before. His movements were so quick they almost didn't seem real. His big Hollywood break came with Enter the Dragon in 1973, a film made with the backing of Warner Brothers. This was a big deal because it was one of the first major martial arts movies with such strong support in Hollywood. And it starred an Asian actor as the lead hero, which was rare. In Enter the Dragon, Lee played a secret agent on a mission to take down a criminal gang. The film was a massive hit, pulling in over $200 million globally and becoming one of the top moneymakers of the year. This success opened a lot of doors for Lee in Hollywood, and he started getting offers for even bigger projects. Sadly, Lee passed away at the age of 32, right when he was set to become an even bigger star. Despite his career being cut short, Lee's influence on the movie industry is undeniable. Lee's films broke new ground. They didn't just make a lot of money, they changed how Asian actors were seen in Hollywood. Before Lee, Asian actors were often stuck in minor roles. Lee showed that Asian actors could be the main heroes and pull in big audiences. His success paved the way for other Asian actors and martial artists in the entertainment industry. Lee's impact went beyond movies. He created his own style of martial arts called Jeet Kune Do, focusing on practical fighting techniques and personal improvement. This philosophy and his emphasis on staying fit and always getting better inspired millions worldwide. Lee's dedication to martial arts and his charismatic personality made him a cultural icon whose influence continues today. Let's dive into Bruce Lee's deep impact on movies and martial arts and why his legacy still matters so much today. A star too bright for the world. Some might argue that Lee's movies were too focused on action and didn't have enough of a story. They might say his films were about showing off his martial arts skills, rather than telling a deep and meaningful story. However, it's tough to overlook the impact Lee had. He was more than just a movie star. He pioneered the way people saw martial arts films and inspired countless individuals to take up martial arts themselves. But let's dig deeper into why Lee was so influential. Firstly, his movies introduced Western audiences to martial arts in a way that wasn't just about fighting, it was about artistry and philosophy. His approach to martial arts was new and exciting. It was about being fast, efficient, and adaptable. Secondly, Lee's roles were powerful because they conveyed strength, intelligence, and integrity, traits that were often not associated with Asian characters in Hollywood at that time. Moreover, Lee's legacy is visible in how action movies are made today. The precision and creativity of fight choreography in modern cinema owe a lot to Lee's pioneering work. Actors today who perform their own stunts or engage deeply with their action roles are following in the footsteps Lee left behind. His films continue to be a benchmark for action and martial arts cinema, and his influence is seen in how actors and filmmakers approach the genre. Lee was a cultural ambassador. He introduced elements of Chinese culture through his films and promoted the idea of cross-cultural understanding through martial arts. His global appeal helped bridge cultural gaps and brought Eastern and Western audiences together. His philosophy of life, emphasizing personal growth and self-expression, resonates with people across different backgrounds and continues to inspire discussions about culture, identity, and personal development. Bruce Lee wasn't just a film star, he was a philosopher, teacher, and a guiding light for many around the world, and his legacy lives on in various facets of popular culture and personal development. Bruce Lee's passing on July 20th, 1973, was a stark reminder of how fragile life can be, even for someone as seemingly unstoppable as him. On what appeared to be just another busy day in Hong Kong, the world of entertainment was about to be hit hard by the loss of one of its biggest stars. Lee was there to work on his movie Game of Death and was also supposed to have dinner with a producer about a possible new film. But what seemed like a regular day turned into a tragic event that would be talked about around the world. The day started off typically enough. Lee had a meeting with Raymond Chow, his producer, to chat about a future film. After this, he went over to the apartment of actress Betty Ting to rehearse lines for Game of Death. Ting was more than just a colleague, she was also a friend. During their session, Lee started to complain about a headache. This didn't seem like a big deal at the time, just a minor inconvenience. Ting gave him a painkiller to help, not knowing this small act would have huge consequences. Lee decided to take a nap, hoping to sleep off the headache, but he never woke up. After failing to rouse him, a doctor was called and Lee was rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, it was too late. He was declared dead upon arrival. The official cause of death was cerebral edema, a severe swelling in the brain caused by a reaction to the painkiller. Cerebral edema, or swelling of the brain, is a serious medical issue. It happens when fluid builds up in the spaces of the brain, causing increased pressure. This can happen for several reasons, including injuries, infections, or reactions to drugs, as in Lee's case. The skull doesn't stretch, so when the brain swells, it has nowhere to go. This leads to increased pressure inside the skull, which can cut off the blood flow and oxygen the brain needs to function. Symptoms start small, like headaches or dizziness, but can quickly get worse, leading to severe problems like losing control over basic bodily functions. When the swelling gets too severe, it can cause the brain to push against the skull or squeeze important areas like the brainstem, which controls vital functions such as breathing and heart rate. This can lead to a cascade of problems, where the pressure from the swelling cuts off more blood flow, which in turn causes more swelling and pressure, ultimately leading to death if not treated quickly. This condition isn't just a rare tragedy, it has claimed the lives of other well-known individuals, including American singer Nicolette Larson, among others. Bruce Lee's sudden death at the young age of 32 really shook everyone up.
I just came here today to pay respect to a guy who loved life like crazy. And I'll talk to you soon, Bruce.
It was like the whole world just stopped for a moment, trying to make sense of what happened. All sorts of people, from everyday fans to big movie stars, seemed to be in total shock. They quickly filled newspapers and TV screens with their sadness and praises for Lee. At his funeral, it was quite a scene. You had major actors like Steve McQueen, who not only acted, but also learned martial arts from Lee, helping carry his coffin. James Coburn was there too, along with other celebrities, all showing just how much Lee meant to them, not just as a martial artist, but as a real influencer in their lives. As we reflect on Lee's film achievements, we now turn to personal stories from those who knew him and the persistent rumors about his unexpected death. A dark farewell fit for a fighter. Then there was Chuck Norris, another martial arts actor who had gone toe-to-toe with Lee in movies.
Bruce was an incredible guy, and this is, and this time I spent with him, going through this whole thing here, was something that I will never forget about. And so this is about Bruce Lee.
He was all about praising Lee, even though you could tell he liked being in the limelight a bit himself. He talked about them being like two warriors who respected each other a lot, which was his way of showing how much he looked up to Lee, even though it also felt a bit like he was enjoying the attention. The world of martial arts felt the hit especially hard. Important figures like Jun Rhee, who people call the father of American Taekwondo, were really sad about losing someone who had made martial arts popular around the world.
It's like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
Lee wasn't just about fighting. He taught people that martial arts were about growing as a person, learning discipline, and expressing yourself. In Hong Kong, Lee's funeral was almost like that of a president or some huge leader. Thousands of people crowded the streets just to watch his coffin go by. It showed just how much people loved him and how big of a deal he was. But sometimes, you had to wonder if all this show of grief was more about how famous he was, rather than who he really was as a person. Bruce Lee had turned martial arts into something that wasn't just about fighting. It was a way to better yourself, to stick to a strict routine, and to show who you are through your actions. This idea had a big impact on lots of people, far beyond just those who practiced martial arts. And while everyone was saying how great he was, it sometimes felt like they were more interested in being part of the big story than in the man himself. Lee had this huge, almost legendary status, and it seemed like people were quick to talk more about the legend than the actual guy. It's interesting, too, how quickly everyone jumped to honor him. It was like they couldn't wait to make him into this larger-than-life figure. This happens a lot with celebrities. Their real selves get lost as soon as they become symbols or icons. People were super quick to celebrate him as this almost mythical figure, which was a bit strange. It made you think about how we treat famous people when they die. Like suddenly, their real stories don't matter as much as the stories we want to tell about them. Bruce Lee left a big mark on pop culture and martial arts, and people didn't just forget about him after he died. His ideas and unique style kept people talking and paying tribute to him long after the initial buzz of his passing died down. Those who knew him personally often talked about him as more than a movie star or martial artist. They described him as a deep thinker and a devoted family man. Jean-Claude Van Damme, for example, often shares how Bruce Lee's movie, Enter the Dragon, really inspired him when he was just 13 years old. That film was a big moment for Van Damme, starting a lifetime of looking up to Lee, which influenced both his martial arts and his acting career. Van Damme's excitement is obvious when he talks about the first time he saw Lee on screen. He praises Lee's skills and his fresh, dynamic martial arts style that really shook up the usual roles given to Asian actors in Hollywood back then. Lee's performances weren't just about his martial arts moves. They also showed off his charm and energy, which really captured Van Damme's imagination. Van Damme talks about how Lee's performance completely hooked him as a kid, pointing him toward his own future in martial arts and movies. But Van Damme's admiration wasn't just about being a fan. Lee's example really guided his path to success. Van Damme would say,
"Goal for me, an achievement to become better and better,"
explaining how posters of Bruce Lee on his bedroom walls served as daily inspiration. For Van Damme, Lee wasn't just a martial artist or an actor. He was the ultimate example of what you could achieve with hard work and passion. This powerful influence of Lee didn't just shape Van Damme's work ethic, it drove him, pushing him to refine his skills and make his own mark in the competitive worlds of martial arts and cinema. This deep influence that Lee had shows just how impactful his legacy was, setting an example of what success could look like in a tough industry. But it's interesting to think about the bigger picture here. The entertainment industry loves to sell these stories of larger-than-life figures. They often pump up the glamorous parts and downplay the real tough struggles. It makes you wonder how much of this is about selling a good story versus telling the true, full story. Everyone loves a good hero story, and Bruce Lee's story fits perfectly. It's a tale of a guy breaking barriers, showing incredible skill, and leaving a legacy that others follow. It's a powerful narrative that keeps his memory alive in a very grand way. But there's always more to people than just their public image or the roles they play on screen. While it's great to celebrate Lee's achievements and the path he paved for others, it's also important to remember the person behind the celebrity. Stories like these can sometimes overshadow the real human experiences, the everyday struggles, and the personal victories that aren't as flashy but are just as important. With Lee's enduring influence in question, this chapter explores the ongoing debates and conspiracy theories about the real reasons behind his death. Van Damme's unexpected tribute to Lee. When Bruce Lee died suddenly, Jean-Claude Van Damme felt it deeply, almost as if he had lost a mentor he had never actually met, someone whose success had lit the way for his own rise to fame. Instead of getting lost in sadness, Van Damme used Lee's death as a kind of personal guide for how to shape his career. He looked up to Lee's intense dedication and passion as a model to follow, seeing it as a blueprint for achieving greatness. This wasn't just about talent, it was about sticking to your goals relentlessly. Van Damme took this lesson seriously, aiming not just to follow in Lee's footsteps, but to forge his own path and pay tribute to Lee's influence through his own work in martial arts and acting. Van Damme often speaks highly of the unique combination of charisma, skill, and thoughtful philosophy that Lee brought to his roles, acknowledging how this greatly influenced his own growth as a fighter and an actor. Lee's advice to be adaptable and powerful, like water, clearly resonated with Van Damme, guiding his approach to overcoming obstacles both in his professional and personal life. To Van Damme, Bruce Lee was more than just a hero on the big screen. He was a sort of life coach, a thinker, and a huge source of motivation. But while Van Damme and others speak fondly of Lee and draw inspiration from his life and work, there's a whole other side to Lee's story that gets a lot of attention: the circumstances of his death. Despite the official explanation, there's a lot of doubt and speculation about what really happened, with some people believing quite dramatic theories, including the idea that Lee was targeted and killed by the Chinese mafia. Those who believe this theory argue that certain details about his death just don't add up and suggest something more sinister. As Van Damme uses Lee's life as a roadmap for success, it's also clear that associating with a legendary figure like Lee is good for one's public image. It's a way to connect with greatness and keep your own star shining bright. This sort of homage can sometimes feel like it's as much about boosting one's own profile as it is about remembering a beloved icon. Meanwhile, the conspiracy theories about Lee's death continue to captivate people, adding an element of ongoing drama that keeps Lee in the public eye. Whether these theories are true or not, they make Lee's story even more compelling and keep people talking about him decades after his death. It's a mix of genuine respect for his contributions and a fascination with the unknown details of his life and death. In the entertainment world, the story of a star like Bruce Lee is not just about the person himself. It's also about how his image is crafted and maintained over time. While it's great to see how much impact Lee had on people like Van Damme, there's also a sense that in the rush to honor him, some might also be taking advantage of his legendary status to enhance their own image. And the rumors and speculations about his death, whether they're believed or not, serve to keep his legend alive, making sure that he remains a topic of conversation. At the young age of 32, Lee had reached the top of his game. He was known around the world not just as a film star, but as a symbol of Asian power and charm. His sudden death, just before his major film Enter the Dragon was released, shocked everyone. It was such a quick end to a bright and booming career. Naturally, this sudden goodbye made people start to wonder if someone had a reason to want him gone. Now, one popular guess is that the Chinese mafia was involved, and the timing of Lee's death is often pointed at as a big clue. Around that time, Lee was in the middle of some pretty heated arguments with film production companies about who should control and make money from his films. These weren't just small disagreements, they were big enough to make enemies who might even have connections to organized crime. Adding more fuel to the fire, Lee had also decided not to pay the usual protection fees to the triads for his film sets in Hong Kong. Back then, paying these fees was common practice, so not doing so was a bold and dangerous move. Those who believe in this theory suggest that his refusal could have seriously angered the mafia, who might have seen him as a threat to their control over the local film industry. According to them, getting rid of Lee would have been a way to keep their power intact. Then, there were rumors that Lee had received death threats before he passed away, which some people take as a sign that he was indeed in danger from criminal groups. However, these claims don't have much solid evidence behind them and are mostly based on second-hand information. The details of his death also make some people raise their eyebrows. He died in the apartment of actress Betty Ting, and this setting alone makes some suggest it was a planned incident. Further adding to the suspicions, an autopsy showed he died from swelling in the brain caused by an allergic reaction to a painkiller. This led to more speculation, with some people thinking maybe the medication had been messed with. Plus, many feel that the investigation into his death was rushed and not thorough, hinting that maybe there was an attempt to keep the truth hidden to protect certain people. Then, there's another theory that's out there, but is pretty hard to believe: a family curse. Some folks think that a curse was following the Lee family, causing not only Bruce's death, but also his son Brandon's years later, in a strange accident on a movie set. This theory even mentions Bruce's brother, who died before Bruce was even born, as supposed proof of the curse. People who believe this also point to his parents, who were very superstitious and even gave him a nickname, Little Phoenix, to trick the spirits and keep him safe. As we continue discussing Bruce Lee's death, let's look at how celebrity myths captivate us and why we're drawn to conspiracy theories for answers. Bruce Lee's unanswered end. And it's not just the Lees who are said to be cursed. The Kennedy family is another example that often comes up. They've faced a lot of tragedies, like the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert Kennedy, along with other accidents and early deaths. But again, connecting these sad events to a curse is probably more about our love for a good, dramatic story than anything real. Let's take a closer look at two well-known stories that keep people talking and scratching their heads. The first story is about the Grimaldi family of Monaco. There's a tale that's been around for ages about them being cursed by a witch way back in the 13th century. This curse supposedly makes it impossible for any family member to have a happy marriage. Every time something goes wrong in their love lives, or another tragedy strikes, like Princess Grace's tragic car accident in 1982, people nod and say, "Ah, it's the curse at work again." This idea of a curse is neat and tidy because it gives a simple explanation for every bad thing that happens to them, stretching over hundreds of years. Now, shifting back to Bruce Lee and the unusual theory surrounding his sudden death. Some of his fans and a few researchers think it wasn't just a typical medical issue, but something as specific as a heat stroke linked to him having surgery to remove his underarm sweat glands. Yes, apparently Bruce had these glands removed in 1972 because he didn't want sweat stains showing up on his clothes while he was filming. While that might seem a bit extreme just to avoid sweat marks, the people who believe this theory think that this surgery had serious consequences. They argue that sweat glands are super important because they help control body temperature. Normally, when you get hot, the glands start working. Sweating cools you down as it evaporates from your skin. But according to this theory, without sweat glands under his arms, Bruce's body couldn't cool down properly. This made him more likely to overheat, especially while doing intense physical activity or under hot studio lights, leading to what they think was a fatal heat stroke. But hang on, let's think about this critically. The human body is quite complex and has many ways to handle heat. To say that removing a few sweat glands would directly cause someone's death is simplifying things a lot. It's a big leap to make, and while it makes for a gripping story, it doesn't really line up with how our bodies work. It's much more likely that there are other factors at play or that it's just one of those unexpected, tragic events. Bruce Lee, a man famous for his intense dedication and almost superhuman stamina, was always pushing his limits. Right before he passed away, he was working hard on his movie Game of Death, doing very demanding physical activities in the hot and humid weather of Hong Kong. Now, this theory that's been floated around suggests that a combination of his grueling training, the extreme weather, and an unusual surgery he had, where he had the sweat glands from his underarms removed, might have created the perfect conditions for a heat stroke. For those who might not know, heat stroke is a severe condition where your body gets so hot it can't cool itself down anymore. When this happens, you can experience things like a very high fever, a fast heartbeat, confusion, or even passing out. Those who believe this theory point to the way Bruce Lee felt on the last day of his life. Apparently, he was complaining about a headache and just not feeling right, which led him to take a nap from which he never woke up. Later that night, when he didn't respond, he was rushed to the hospital and sadly, he was declared dead. These symptoms, the theory suggests, could indicate that he was experiencing a heat stroke. Adding to the story, some folks think that the official reason given for his death, cerebral edema, which is swelling in the brain caused by an allergic reaction to a painkiller, might not tell the whole story. They speculate that the real culprit could have been the heat stroke, which then led to the reaction that caused the swelling. It's interesting, though, to consider that this focus on his removed sweat glands might be oversimplifying a complex situation. Yes, it's a compelling story to think that a cosmetic surgery could lead to such a tragic outcome. It has that element of irony, being undone by one's own efforts to look good on camera. However, to say that losing a few sweat glands directly led to his death ignores how complex the human body is. Our bodies are equipped with many ways to handle heat, and it seems a bit far-fetched to say that the absence of some sweat glands under his arms would be enough to cause a fatal condition. What's more, there's a bit of a tendency to want to wrap up Bruce Lee's death in a neat, dramatic package. It's as if the plain truth that accidents and medical conditions can happen randomly isn't quite satisfying enough. We seem drawn to the idea of a legendary figure being brought down by his quest for physical perfection. It's a story that fits neatly into a narrative arc, but life isn't always so neatly scripted. Could Jean-Claude Van Damme's claim about Bruce Lee's death uncover hidden truths, or is it just another addition to the pile of unsolved topics around his death? What do you think? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives and revelations.